Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for your patience with the technical difficulties. We see that some people are joining, so we'll give it just a few minutes to ensure everyone can get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks everybody for joining. I'm sorry about that technical difficulty, but we appreciate your patience. My name is Ann Chapman. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships here at the National Council for Behavioral Health. I'm here to introduce your speaker today. Tremaine El-Amin is the Assistant Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. So we both work on the Public Education Division within the National Council, and we support the Mental Health First Aid public education program. So today you're going to hear a bit about mental health overview, a lot about the stressors, the particular stressors that we're all uniquely experiencing during the time of COVID, and how the skills that you learn through the mental health first aid program can really support in managing a lot of that. Tremaine has been with the National Council for almost 8 years at this point and has helped grow the mental health first aid program when it was first brought to the United States to where it is now. We have over 2.5 million people trained across the United States. So we're really proud to see the growth of the program. She's got a wealth of experience. She's also a certified national trainer in mental health first aid. So I'm going to turn it over to, again, our Assistant Vice President, Tremaine El-Amin.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks so much, Anne, for that introduction. Really appreciate it, and thank you all. I think we are all Zooming, right? We're going from Zoom to Zoom meeting, different platforms, WebEx, Zoom, so many different things, but so glad that you are joining us today, and so grateful to work with some amazing individuals like Jose and Anne that are with us, just supporting you in getting this information. And thank you to the California Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education for even inviting us to share this information on this last day of Mental Health Month. We are really, last work day anyway, we're really excited to be with you all and to share some information about, as Anne mentioned, mental health first aid, but also just some practical information about what you can do to support those that are around you, that are in your environment, in your homes, in your communities, in your camps, right? Some of you are probably going to do some virtual camps. And so really excited for you all to be a part. So I'm going to dive in because we did lose a few minutes with all of our technical interestingness, but we thank you for your flexibility. One of the things that we're really excited about is being able to talk to you today about how mental health first aid can foster skills around building resilience, focusing on resilience for young people, for adults, and for those who might have a crisis situation or a non-crisis situation that they might be dealing with. So really important for us to keep all of those things in mind, that this is something that can be used day to day. And we're going to share with you some guidance on how to support each other and others during each other and ourselves, during such an interesting time in our world. So specifically, the learning objectives are around what is our mental health first aid action plan. Many of you might have been trained in first aid or CPR. There's something that we have a mnemonic that's similar to that kind of learning modality, and really excited to talk to you about what that is and how you can use it in your environments. Really focusing on how do we build resiliency? How do we help people who are still in the midst of all that they're doing day to day, either providing support through education and public education. Outdoors is the only place we can go in some cases. And so how are camps and individuals that are working within camps or organizations that are focused on outdoor education really going to be able to pivot to support those that are engaging with them in their programs? In addition, we want you to take care of you. So what is some self-care stuff that you're already doing? What can you do more of? And what haven't you thought about? So we're going to crowdsource some of that information. In addition, we're going to talk about some resources that we have on our websites, on other people's websites, that are really helpful around COVID-19, and things that I know are places you've already ventured into, or things that might be helpful for you as you move forward. So thanks again for tuning in, and let's just delve right in. So as Anne mentioned, we at National Council brought mental health first aid here years ago to the United States from Australia, where it originated. And it really is a program that shows you how to support someone in non-crisis or crisis situations when it comes to mental health and substance use challenges. And so our organization is actually a 50-year-old organization that really focuses on supporting our safety net across the country when it comes to mental health and substance use. And that's our provider organizations, a network of more than 3,300 of individuals, groups of individuals that provide essential services for behavioral health in communities in every part of the United States, and who are really, really needed right now, but also incredibly resource stretched, as you can imagine, because of so many closures and the impact of COVID-19. So we support them from a policy and education perspective, but we also have a flagship public education program, which is Mental Health First Aid. And when we think about that, how many of you, if you could go ahead and type into the chat box, how many of you have already been trained in CPR and first aid? I would venture to say the majority, but go ahead and type into the chat box. Let us know. Let me know if you have already been trained in CPR and first aid. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Catherine and Lisa and Amanda, everybody. Yes, CPR, first aid, Amy, Hilly, thank you. And so there is the opportunity for all of us to know what to do. Now, during that training, since so many of you have taken it, during that training, how many of you have learned how to do tracheotomy during your CPR training? How many of you did that? No? Okay. What about learning to reset a compound fracture? No? Nope, none of that, right? Nope. Hilly did, okay. So most of us, that wasn't part of our CPR first aid training, right? And so what we want you to understand is that CPR first aid, similar to mental health first aid, is just that initial help. It's not going to teach you how to be a couch psychiatrist, not going to be a license to say Tremaine said I can go rent out some amazing space and have a cute couch and have people sit and tell me their challenges and solve them. This is not giving a license for that. But what it is a 3-year certification that allows you to be certified in support, really knowing what to do when it's uncomfortable, knowing what to do when it's hard to have a conversation around suicide or non-suicidal self-injury or anxiety or depression, or someone who just feels like they're not doing well today, right? So it really is about supporting someone and understanding exactly what they need to do to get the help that they need and making them more comfortable in doing so. And so it is the help, as you see, that's offered to a person who's developing a mental health challenge or experiencing a mental health crisis. And like CPR, it's given until the appropriate treatment and support are received or until the crisis resolves. And so it's to demystify the whole topic of mental health. That's the purpose of the course. Increase literacy, decrease stigma. Now, that can be in the workplace or in our communities or in our homes. So it really is important to do. So definitely want to make sure that all of you are aware that this isn't therapy, but it really focuses on risk factors and warning signs of mental illness and substance use challenges. And it really is about helping more people get access to the information that's valuable. So we've trained, as Anne said, more than 2.5 million people across the country to recognize those warning signs. And it's available in every state and territory. And feel bad for me because I took one for the team and went to Hawaii and did the first instructor training there. So feel bad for me that that's what I had to do. Definitely excited about the program's growth. It's in all across all of the territories of the United States, and we want to see it in more communities and in more hands, this information in more hands. So specifically in California, California is leading the nation with a number of people trained in mental health first aid. That is in schools, as in communities. And so Project Caldwell specifically really focused on school-based mental health and access. And that project is still going on, still going strong. And since the first course held in 2008, we've seen such a huge uptick in individuals who are accessing mental health first aid through federal and state funding. Nationally, 27 school districts across the country have implemented youth mental health first aid in some way. And we have more than 150,000 Californians who've been trained in the program. And when I say youth mental health first aid, I'm talking about the number of curricula that we have. We have 3 core curricula: adults for 18 and over, youth mental health first aid, which is from adults who work with youth 12 to 18, or in this summer, we'll be expanding it from K to 12. And then we have teen mental health first aid, which is for teens themselves. It is a 3-segment course that's done during the school day or during the youth programming that you have in your organization, like at the Boys and Girls Club, for instance, who's implemented it nationally, or also in 4-H clubs, right? So many different areas where teen mental health first aid can be useful, and that's for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders specifically. And that's a peer-to-peer program where it teaches teens how to find a caring adult and get that adult to intervene on behalf of their friend without losing the friendship. And so we know that's important. We address social media challenges, bullying, all kinds of school violence, all kinds of issues that young people are facing today are addressed in both the youth mental health first aid curricula as well as the teen mental health first aid curricula. We also have specific modules that go along with our adult course that support individuals in higher education, law enforcement, first responder, older adult, and fire and EMS areas. And so we're so excited about this tailored and customized content, and it is available all over the country. I'm going to get into some specific things that we can do, just practical tips and tools that are found within our content, also that are have been developed as a result of COVID-19 in response to it. But just want to give you a sense of what's packed into the curricula. And it really does teach you risk factors and warning signs of mental health and substance use challenges, and also typical adolescent development versus what's going on that might not be typical, right, for youth. But then we focus on a number of disorders to educate on what they are, not to help people diagnose, but to know what signs and symptoms to look for. And that's done through that 5-step action plan that I mentioned, that's like the ABCs of CPR, right? But definitely focus on knowing what to do when, and helps you understand that. Now, this program is evidence-based. It has lots of resources that are included in it and are required to be shared so people know how to get local help. This course is also trained or delivered through a network of 15,000 individuals who've gone through a train-the-trainer process to be able to teach the course. The course is 8 hours in person in length. If it's an adult course, it is 6.5 hours in length in terms of the content itself. If it is a youth mental health first aid course for adults that work with youth. And we've recently deployed a virtual training option, which is a 2-hour self-paced online course that is connected to a 4-hour instructor-led course delivered through the Zoom platform and through our LMS. And so that's 6 hours total of content, but only 4 hours live delivery from a virtual perspective for all of our course content moving forward, including our adult, youth, and our teen programming later this year. So those are the options. That's what the curricula entails. And our Algae Action Plan allows us to deliver that in a way that helps you remember. I'm just showing you a little bit of the topics that are covered in the adult mental health first aid course, similar to what we do in the youth mental health first aid course, but we do address suicide and non-suicidal self-injury, along with what to do when and how to do self-care, because that's critically important. When we talk about the Algae Action Plan, it really is about initiating a conversation, listening well, giving the right kind of information, and then encouraging help in 2 different ways: professional help and other support strategies that are connected to self-help. And so we want to recognize that everyone doesn't need the same kind of help or assistance at any given moment, but 1 in 5 of us in any given year will meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental health condition. And so it's really important that in this environment, we're doing what we need to do to help people assess whether or not it's a serious and crisis situation. Listen in a way that's non-judgmentally. Now, I know all of you are good listeners, and I thought I was too, and then I got married 5 years ago, but that's beside the point. What's important is that we learn how to listen and suspend that judgment about what the person is saying and really hear them in a way that resonates with them. We talk about giving reassuring information, not that everything's going to be okay, because we don't know that, but making sure that we understand that giving reassuring information means knowing that help is available, that that person is not alone, and encouraging them to get self-help or other professional help if it's warranted. So that's what we do in the course, but we want to leave you with some practical tips about what you can do in your current work environments, in our current reality in our communities, to support others. So while I start to talk about COVID-19 and some of the challenges and stressors that we might experience, I know you know this already. You already know exactly what you're seeing in your communities with your individuals that you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis. So if you could go ahead and type into the chat box for me, what are those things that you're seeing that are stressors, recent stressors related to COVID-19? Go ahead and type those into the chat box and let me know what you're seeing, and we'll talk about whether or not it's the same things that we're seeing as well, because I think there's some synergy between that. So go ahead and type into the chat box. What are you seeing? Okay, Hilly, thank you. Unreasonable fears. Amy's talking about a loss of income. Rachel says unsure future employment. Absolutely. Really, so much is up in the air, right? A lack of leadership, blurred or great divide between work, parenting, and being home. Yes, I saw a wonderful quote, Aminta, that talked about, we're not working from home. We are in a crisis, in a global pandemic, attempting to do life and all of life from our homes and not just our workplaces. So it's not just working from home. Absolutely. Completely new ways to run programs. Yes. Amy says change in schedules. Kids' school. Absolutely. How many of you parents are now homeschool teachers, right? Homeroom. You're the gym teacher. You're doing all of the classes, right? All of those things are happening. Yes, Weasel talks about a lack of physical intimacy. Yes. And that loss of face-to-face connection, Amy, so important. So that social distancing, that's a result of us trying to physically distance. Absolutely, that's true. And definitely family members with special needs. Yes, very, very true that these are all compounding issues, right? Yes, Lisa, let's not forget that it's not just about what's going on with COVID, but it's all these extenuating circumstances that we're experiencing collectively, and in some communities, very poignantly, that are compounding our stress, compounding trauma, and community challenges that we're facing. Absolutely, specifically around racial inequity and other inequities as well. And so we want to make sure that we're taking all that into account, and we can understand why somebody might be short with us in line, or might not have the best response when we ask them to do something, right? So all of this adjustment, right, Coulter, all of these new routines are definitely things that we need to pay attention to. And so how do we do that in the work environment and support each other in the process? Joanna's sharing some amazing things. So definitely just disconnecting. All of us are challenged, but some of us are challenged even more, right? Definitely. And so we want to make sure that we're aware of those stressors, and specifically for vulnerable populations, right? So older adults, children and teens who are missing those milestones and those opportunities to have rites of passage, right? Graduations and celebrations and birthdays, and, playing with friends, recess, right? Recess, it's gone for the moment for a lot of folks. And so people who are actually essential workers, many of us don't think of essential workers just as, the healthcare providers or first responders, but folks in the grocery store, delivery people, individuals who are helping us maintain our day-to-day semblance of normalcy in some way or regard. Folks who are on assembly lines, right, and have to continue to go to work and put themselves at risk day to day. And so that's something that we know is happening. And then let's just add to that the fact that some of us have had pre-existing conditions when it comes to mental health and substance use. And we've seen an uptick nationally in the amount of individuals that are consuming alcohol. And we know that suicide and suicidal ideation, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline has received an increase in an influx in calls, as well as the crisis text line. And we'll talk about those resources in a moment. So all of those things are happening. All of those things are happening ongoing, but there's hope. And I just want to remind us today that there is hope, because all of us are hopeful about the future, but there are things that we can do, practical things, to start to mitigate some of this. And so we also want to make sure that we're thinking about the cultural considerations of how these things impact us on a day-to-day basis. And when we say culture, we mean that broadly: race, gender identity, ethnicity, geography, right? Rural communities, agricultural communities. How is that impacting them differently? Fear and stress and anxiety are typical for us right now, but the best thing to do is to acknowledge those things. And all of these stressors that you mentioned are things that we're hearing nationally. This is just an excerpt of things that we've heard as we've done programming and outreach over the last several years. Excuse me, it feels like years, several months. And definitely understanding that we can do something about all of these, meaning acknowledge them. That's the best thing we can do first. It is okay not to be okay, but then realize that anxiety is a typical human response to a stressful situation. And this would be a stressful situation. All of those compounding things are stressful. So I want to know, what are you doing? What are you doing to really deal with this on a day-to-day basis? Because those are the same things we can do for our coworkers, our families, and our communities. So go ahead and type into the chat box, what are those self-care coping strategies that are positive? What are you doing to cope? All right, let's see. I know you have some amazing things. Puzzles, games, and listening to music. Yes, I've listened to more music in the last 2 months than I have in the last 2 years. Reading, running, go. That is wonderful that you are running. Check-in meetings with coworkers, absolutely. Virtual coffees and happy hours galore. Audiobooks and podcasts, and working out, walking my dog more than my dog wants to walk. I love it. Snuggling kids, they're needing extra support. And I'm sorry, I love to see kids on Zoom calls, and furry children as well on Zoom calls, because it makes me feel great about having some sense of normalcy and seeing people fully present. Yes, no phone when walking a dog. That's awesome. Being social, doing social distance meals. I think that's amazing. I just wish people could mail me the meals that they cook, because they're probably better cooks than I am. Sending postcards, donating to causes I care about as I can. And it makes me feel connected. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Amy and Heather and everyone else that's submitted something. I'm really excited. Gratitude lists, I love, and making sure that I love dancing and laying in the grass. Coulter, now with my allergies, I don't know how I can make that work, but I love it. It sounds amazing. So looking forward to all of this. And Amanda, thanks. The arts and crafts, those are things that work for everyone. And those are the things that we want to make sure we continue to remind people to do. Because sometimes when we're adults, a principle of adult learning is 7 times, 7 ways. One of our national trainers always says that. And it's really important for us to remind people, remind them constantly to do these things that work for them. And to do some things that practice being around, right? Mentally. So mindfulness. For some of us, it may mean turning off the 24-hour news cycle. For others of us, it means being fully informed and digesting the news as appropriate, maybe reading it versus just listening to it, right? So doing all these things that you see, the things that you've said are really important. And as we do those things, we want to know what we should look for when those things aren't working for the individuals that are in our lives and when they're not working for us, right? So we want to delve into some of the content that we cover during the Mental Health First Aid course to help us recognize signs and symptoms. Now, signs are things that we might see, right? And symptoms are things someone might feel. Could you go ahead and type into the chat box for me, what are some of the signs that you might see when someone is in distress, whether it's an emotional distress, a distress related to substance use? What are some of the things you might be able to see physically when that happens? Go ahead and type those into the chat box. Good question. Joanna asks, in Zoom or in person? Let's do both. Let's do both. And I'm gonna mention something. You took one of my talking points, Joanna. I'm gonna mention something about how that's different in our current environment. Yes, okay. And I am saying weasel, but if it is not weasel, please tell me how to pronounce that correctly. As you can imagine, with a name like Tremaine, people always pronounce it in various ways when they see it. So you tell me. Irritability, obsessive cleaning, absolutely not paying attention, Maritza says. Looking distracted, great. More quiet than usual, not talkative or irritable, looking away from the camera, yes. Sleeping longer, yes, not the typical naps, right? But just not getting up. More easily irritated, quicker to anger, shortness with others, yelling more, talking in circles, right? Randomly meandering, speaking rapidly or not as much, or pacing or fidgeting. Yes, Amanda, great. Lisa, yes, nail biting. Loss of focus, not present, withdrawing, keeping the video off. Absolutely, Amy, great. Not darting eyes, constantly washing hands, but not the typical, right? Atypical washing of hands, because we do want to still wash hands. Not engaging, worrying about everything, right? Not being able to turn that off. Or sleep issues, right? Sleeping too much, sleeping too little, not being able to fall asleep, not being able to get up on time. And avoiding self-care. Now, all of these things are things we would see. Absolutely. Tell me some things that we might, as I bring those up, some things that people might feel, right? Thanks, Lisa, for that. Poor hygiene, absolutely. Things we might feel and someone might say, some statements they might say. Go ahead and type those as I bring up the ones that are signs. And you guys, you did a great job on this. There's tons that you got from our list. And I want to point out, yes, definitely hopelessness for symptoms, being afraid, absolutely, and expressing that fear. Feeling separation, absolutely. That's something definitely, Joanna. Also, it's all about making sure that we understand where people might feel, but also may be absent of feeling numb, right? Connecting in unhealthy ways. Yes, Amy, definitely. And feeling paranoid about all of the things, right? There's so much unknown. So that might be typical for right now, but when it's getting in the way is what we need to pay attention to. Absolutely. These are great. Thanks for sharing those. What I want to draw your attention to is to three things: hopelessness, helplessness, and thoughts of death and suicide. Hopelessness, helplessness, and thoughts of death and suicide. Those things and what those statements might sound like is, I don't know if I can do this anymore, right? It might sound like, I'm just tired, I don't want to go on. It may not sound like I'm thinking of killing myself, but that might be what you hear. And what do you do when you hear that, right? And that's what we teach in Mental Health First Aid. What do? You get help, and you support the person when it's a non-crisis situation by helping them tell others people what they need. Voice what you see, voice what you feel, and be honest about that. Some of us are enraged about what we see about the injustices in the world. Give space for that. Create those safe spaces to have those conversations. And all of us are definitely affected by the pandemic. So how do people feel about that? Giving those opportunities for people who want to vocalize, doing it in creative ways, using those arts and crafts, right? Having those conversations with your teams, thinking about what worked before, and how people can take care of themselves, and creating space and opportunity to talk about what your organization provides in the way of professional help, whether that's the EAP program or other kinds of supports. The bottom line is we want you to encourage positive support strategies. So part of those positive support strategies are self-care or team building opportunities. And what have you done with your teams? You can type those in the chat box. I'm going to list some, but some of the opportunities: playing games online, virtual happy hours, reading the same book or watching the same Netflix show and talking about it, right? Whether it's team workouts via Google Hangouts, or trying to share photos of pets, or getting creative together, or practicing mindfulness and meditation in the beginning of meetings. Those are all opportunities to promote self-care. But when things are more serious, and we want to remind you to do that, right? Definitely, Hilly, gripe sessions, right? Just burn it all out and get it out there. I remember when I was in undergrad, we had a group scream on the soccer field and during finals week, right? Just let it out, get it out there. And so definitely reminders on self-care, to accept what happens, create the routines that are necessary, reinvent what well-being looks like in this new environment. You just need to do it differently, right? And then change that focus to think of what you want on the other side of this. And what you want doesn't have to be tangible. I definitely have seen the motivational quotes that are floating around that say things like, if you don't come out of COVID-19 with a new podcast or a new this or a new that, then you haven't done anything. And everybody's different. And maybe you come out on the other side of this having gotten more sleep, having eaten more carbs. Yes. Doing those things that work for you. Absolutely, right? So really important that we maintain that. But when those emergencies happen, very important that we focus on knowing who to call, right? And not only does 911 have to be have it as a resource when it's a crisis, but the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And please, please, please take out those phones. Take out those phones. You can't see my phone. There we go. Take out those phones and plug in 800-273-8255 into your phone, and making sure that we make an effort to know who to call when we hear someone with those hopeless statements and we're concerned about them. And I often get asked, when is it serious? When should I move on it? When do I need to make sure that individuals are able to get support? Because it might not be serious. Maybe they're just saying it. Every time is the time to take that necessary. Every time is the time to take that serious. And take those necessary steps to get someone connected. And hey, if it's not a major issue, then they'll learn that you mean business about keeping people safe, and find new coping strategies and new words to express how they feel. But until such time that they do, every time is a time to take that serious. So type in that crisis text line 741-741 for individuals that are LGBTQ youth. The Trevor Project is a great resource as well. So make sure these are things that you're sharing. We will share these slides so you have these resources. You don't have to memorize it. We won't quiz you at the end, but we want you to have those. And we have plenty of resources around COVID-19 on our website at thenationalcouncil.org. We have plenty of resources that are also links to additional helpful and reliable resources, because there's a lot of junk out there. So we want to make sure we're giving you reliable resources. And that has everything to do with how to respond, what information is helpful. And then another resource is find a course. Like I mentioned, we're getting ready to, in 2 weeks, release to all 15,000 of our instructors the ability to teach virtually. We've tested it for 60 days. We love how it's working. We've ironed out the kinks, and we have safety built into these virtual courses. So you see people and you have an opportunity to tell someone when you're in distress if you're in the course. So lots of things that we've done. So you'll be able in a few weeks to go and find courses near you, and we give instructions for how to do that here. So as we wrap up today, what's really important for me is that you have a next step. And so we really want you to think of a few self-care activities that you're going to commit to, and I'm going to be watching from a distance. You're going to commit to do for yourself in the next 7 days. And when I say self-care, I don't care if it's painting your toenails, painting your dog's toenails, something that works for you. It's really important that we're not just talking about those simplistic things, but it might be 3 things you're going to stop doing, right? Things that you're going to attempt to stop doing in this time frame, meaning how much you and consume the news, or figuring out a way to, when something bothers you, write it down, speak it, look at it, but then let it go, right? Figuring out what works for you. Or maybe you've tried therapy in the past, or a friend of yours has tried therapy in the past, and they're saying, you know what, I'm never doing that again. Well, when you don't like a cereal, you don't swear off a cereal, forever, right? You find another cereal that works for you. And I know that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, and some of us have had very negative experiences, but encourage them to try again, or find something that works for them when it comes to coping. Then I'd like you to identify 2 people you can connect with. They can be distant folks, they can be folks that are local, but 2 people to connect with, just to blow off the steam and talk about how you're feeling, and write those down. And then 1 goal you can work on in your area around mental health awareness in the next year, right? During the next year, what can you do? Maybe it's just taking a mental health first aid class. Maybe it's just taking this webinar today and then telling somebody else about it and sharing the recording with them, right? So it could be anything. You figure out what those things are, and hopefully you can make that commitment to yourself, because like a lot of people say, you can't pour out of an empty cup. Or they might say, put your mask on, right, first before you put on someone else's. So really important that you do those self-care things for yourself as you start to support others. So I want to pause right now and give you all the time to ask the questions that you want. Not all the time, just the time that we have left. And make sure that you let us know what it is that you have questions about. Is it about approaching someone and how to start the conversation? Is it about making sure that where you can get support or where you can get help? We want to be a resource for you. So I've left up on the screen right now our website, my email address. You can also email my colleague Ann. If you have questions, we'd be happy to give you information. And we are completely open to answering any questions you might have. So go ahead, type those questions either in the chat box, I believe, and we have a Q&A segment that's available in the Zoom. You can type them in the Q&A section, or you can type them in the chat box, and we will answer them for you. Was this helpful? Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you can find the thumbs up feature. Was this helpful? Great, great, great. Good deal, good deal. All right, so any questions from folks? Because we will give you back a few minutes in your day if you don't have additional questions, but definitely looking forward to getting you questions. Okay, great. Joanna does have a question, so we'll just pause and wait for you to type that one in. All right. I know, Hilly, I'm sorry. It was a lot of information. I tried to pack it all in very quickly to give you plenty of time for questions. So no worries there. All right. Ways to support colleagues once we're back at work. Taking the course, I think, will help. I think so, Amy. I think it's taking the course definitely is one way to support colleagues. The other way is give space. I know I said that earlier, but literally sometimes we forget that in the busyness of doing all the meetings and Zooming from meeting to meeting to meeting, we forget that sometimes it's not a coffee hour to talk about the work and to catch up with each other, but giving people the opportunity to voice their frustrations and say, oh, don't say that, right? We're not saying that, right? Oh, no, it's going to be fine. Not helpful. But letting people know that, yeah, well, there's some resources, reinforcing those resources that are available in your organization, reinforcing some ways that they can cope, maybe sharing with them, having them share the things that are working for them, the things that they tried that didn't work, right? Those are helpful as well. All right. And let's see, Joanna, you're working with collaborators on a summer program for teachers in middle school and high school. Did you want to type that in, or we can unmute you? Oh, there it is. There we are. Can we schedule a call in person? Absolutely. We definitely can schedule a call with you. Please reach out and email, or you can send your email address to us. It'll say panelists. You can send your email address to all panelists, and we will be able to reach out and get something on the calendar for you. And Joanna, I think you're unmuted too at this point.
I am. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, your presentation, but also whomever had the brilliant idea of inviting you and inviting your team. We so need to talk about mental health when we talk about any kind of planning that we're doing for the near future. Well, we should be always talking about mental health. But anyways, we are working on putting together this program in the summer to serve 20 to 30 teachers. And I would like to know if through your organization, we could schedule a person to come answer questions that teachers might have. We will be sharing all this information that you shared with us today with the teachers, so they will be prepared. But we would like to know if there's a professional that could answer questions in case they have any.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we could work with you to do that and work with you to get some training locally. We know of school districts. Actually, I didn't get into all of that but I will kind of mention it now. There's full states that have adopted youth mental health first aid for all their teachers. The state of Florida and other places. Texas is another one who has state legislation, and all educators in the state of Texas can actually take youth mental health first aid for free. And so same thing in the school district. Florida Department of Education has I think at this point they have something like 700 instructors throughout their school system. And having an in-house mental health first aid instructor builds sustainability and is the best way, because then they're trained to answer those questions. They're trained to provide the course to all your teachers. And so that's something that I think is really helpful. And just put her email address in the chat box. And so we'd be happy, more than happy, for anyone to reach out to us and we can connect the dots. And depending on where you are, there might be free access to this course already. So we want to make sure we're playing matchmaker and getting you connected to those who are in your backyard and are friendly neighbors to do that.
Yes, that would be lovely, because I think that would also give opportunity to the local. We're in California, in Orange County. And
oh yeah, you have tons of instructors in Orange County. I'm always there.
Oh, so. That would be wonderful to connect some of the teachers that we are communicating with.
Yeah.
Check on them, people that we would serve normally in person through field trips. And these are teachers that come to our programs over and over for years. So we've been reaching out to them to check on them. And they're reporting so much stress,
yeah,
so much anxiety. These people are going through so much. And I feel like maybe they don't know, or they're just too overwhelmed to even reach out to the existing resources. So we want to make sure we remind them that these exist. And you guys, if you all could help us identify what the partners are here in Orange County, California.
Absolutely. Orange County Department of Mental Health is one of them. So we'll connect you. We have lots of connections in California, in all of the many counties. So yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. That was a great question. All right. So others have questions? Because we can definitely Oh, great. Thank you, Jose. If you'd like to voice a question, please raise your hand and Jose will unmute you. The raise your hand feature is at the, if you like hover, it'll pop up where you can raise your hand. Either people have questions or people are zoomed out, and I get it. It's Friday afternoon, so totally understand that. All right, so I think just thinking, okay, Haley, absolutely, definitely understand. And, you know, you might think of something later. So feel free to reach out to us, email us if something comes up for you. We'd be happy to answer your questions. And we are just so elated to be a part of this. We've been talking to the USDA and the who are the other folks? 4-H, National 4-H. We have a national partnership with Boys and Girls Clubs of America. We are looking to talk to so many others also. So if there are groups that you think we should be talking to make sure that they have access to know that this resource is in their backyard, we'd be happy to let them know. So thank you so much. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Lisa. And thank all of you for your time today. I couldn't be more thrilled to have this as our final thing of a Friday afternoon. So thank you, and let us know how we can help. And thank you to everyone who allowed us to be here. We're really excited about it. So take care, be well, take care of yourselves, and don't forget your self-care plan. I'm watching you. All right, bye-bye.